Howdy, everybody, and welcome. I am the Creepy Kentuckian.
I'm Uncle Bill. Oh, let's get ready to blow your socks off.
We have another review, a patron requested review. A baller and shot caller, Dumile, specifically requested this review. And you know what, Uncle Bill? We do have one baller and shot caller spot open on DEADPIT on Patreon.com where you can request a review, commentary, show topic, whatever the hell you want.
That's right.
On a monthly basis.
And so it better get filled soon, or I'm going to tell you right now, like, I'm going to beat the shit out of somebody.
But today, it's a horse of a different color, Uncle Bill. We kind of requested this because Dumile normally picks just some of the weirdest, like, avant-garde cinema this side of France and Germany and, you know, the Himalayas or wherever the hell it's from. It's some artsy fartsy shit most of the time. But this time, it's a very early Universal horror movie from 1932. It's one that I had heard the name, but I'll admit I had never seen it at all until he requested that we take a look at this movie.
And this is one that I don't think we probably ever would have watched on our own or anything like that, because 1932 and the fact that it's a lesser known movie, really. I mean, I don't think it's lesser known maybe amongst like cinema aficionados, but in our circles, it's probably lesser known.
I think that Universal had finally remastered it proper like 6 or 7 years ago.
Well, there was a story that the negative was lost, right? Like for a long time, like there was not a good print of this movie that existed. And it just kind of, I don't want to say it faded away because people still remembered it and still like knew about it and everything because of its reputation, but it wasn't on anything like that was a decent copy of it.
You got to look at it this way too. It's from 1932. So this is right around the time the original Universal monster movies were being made. You know, the director of this, James Whale, also directed the Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein movies, The Invisible Man. And he was the guy that did this one too. And this, The Old Dark House, that's what we're talking about, from 1932, was maybe one of the very early, I don't want to say like haunted house, I guess kind of like haunted house, spooky vibe movie from that era. It has to be one of the early, because we're talking like early days of talkie movies as well.
Yeah, it's when people talk like, "Yeah, we're gonna go in this house. We're gonna see what's got going on down there. There's somebody in the attic that's not too well, because eat up with consumption, I reckon." Like they talk like that, like in this movie. So that's how early of a movie this was. But also, you ever watch a movie and you're like, especially these early movies, and you're like, "Holy shit!" Like I see now where like a lot of these other guys got shit from, like the later directors and the more modern directors. Like I was watching this and I was like, there's so many people that stole from this movie that it's insane, man. Like I'm talking about like Rob Zombie, 100%. There's shots in this movie where I was like, this is House of 1,000 Corpses. Like he just fucking took almost straight from this movie and put it in House of 1,000 Corpses. Like, and maybe he made it, he added some fucks and some makeup and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, but it's the same shots and the same kind of like setups and things like that too. And you see so many different people like that it influenced, like these I won't even say haunted house movies, but movies where like House of 1,000 Corpses, where somebody goes inside of a house and there's like something creepy going in there, like, or there's people in there that are kind of deranged. Like almost all of those movies that we know of like that from the 80s, 90s, 2000s stole from this movie. There's so many things in this movie that
even like soon thereafter, like I think movies like The House on Haunted Hill and the haunting kind of like that formula. Even back then, I think that it was the old dark house style movie is what filmmakers called it. For years and years, because there's how many.
Sure, there's movies before this that had this, but I think this probably is the start of. We're talking about 32, so there can't be that many movies that are like before it that have the
Yeah.
same kind of atmosphere, setup, sound, shit like that. There just can't be. This is like the really early stages of that. I'll tell you another movie that I think that copied off this movie too. And this is kind of a little bit more difficult to see, but it's got a lot of the same setups, especially in the beginning, is Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Mm-hmm.
Just the whole idea of like how it starts and everything. So like it starts with a couple that gets in a rainstorm and they get flooded and they have to go to this old dark house to get help because their car broke down. And they go in there and like one of the first people that they see is Boris Karloff, who is like
He's the manservant.
he's the manservant who's got like a scar down his face and everything. And he doesn't speak, but he's like God, what's his
Don't
damn
they
name?
say he's an alcoholic or something like that? And when he
No,
gets
listen. Scene where they try to explain like what's going on with him, and I died laughing, man, because it's so like inappropriate. So, like after they meet him, he plays Morgan is the name of his character, who's kind of like the manservant. After they meet him, they meet this other woman who's the whatever, like the sister of the guy that's like over the house, and she's talking to him, and she's like says something like, "Don't worry about him. I try to understand what he's saying, but he's dumb." Like,
he's
explains that he's dumb. Like that was, yeah, that was just the way they kind of explain stuff in the 30s, I guess.
there's a spectacle with that, see?
That's how they talk. Yeah.
Well, you got to think this is around the same time as like the Three Stooges serials and stuff like that was out.
That's
Same sort of time periods. So that's what, like, for people that haven't seen that, I'm sure about everybody's seen the Three Stooges episode. Same sort of talk, right? I guess that's how people talk back then. They all talk like used car salesmen or something. I don't know.
It's that dialect though is so weird because I was thinking about that while I was watching the movie. Like, how did that go away? So that was like in the 30s and the 40s, right? And then by the 50s, that way of talking is pretty much completely gone. Like, what happened to it? Like, how did we go from?
Well, I would imagine that the actors, that's how they acted on stage, like for plays and stuff like that. So maybe over the years, they just said, hey, you don't need all this overemphasizing and overacting and stuff like that for TV. You can be more, you know, laid back. Don't be so like, oh, let's go down the street there.
Well, here's the weird thing about that, right? So I would think that too, but like even back then, like sportscasters and things like that talk that way as well. So it was like, I don't know, was that a common just way of talking, or was that just the way people talk that were in any kind of form of like radio or television or anything like? Because listen to like sports broadcasters back then, they'll be like, "Here comes to the plate, Satchel Paige. That's a hell of a hitter with a 156." Blah, blah, blah. And
I'll
that's
tell
like,
you, I've got a wrestling tape of fucking, God, I think it's from like the early 50s, maybe late 40s. Has Gorgeous George on it and whoever some of the older fuckers are, and they talk like that too. Like, he's coming to the ring. The fans, they're throwing trash at him. They don't
the fans
like him.
shit themselves, folks. The fans shit themselves right in the pants, and we are going to the
Gorgeous
ring.
George think he's such a good looking boy.
Sounds like fucking Jed Crandall. Like, don't go down that road. Yeah, fucking ground is sound out now.
George, no, you don't want to go there.
But like, okay, other than the fact that I don't know what happened to that dialect, and I want to know. So the basic gist of the movie is These people are trapped in this house. They can't leave because there's like a flood outside. The people that are in the house that own the house are all really super creepy, especially the Morgan character. And they just keep talking about like all these other people that are in the house that you don't really like, that they don't want the people to kind of like associate with. So there's like an old woman that's upstairs, and there is like another guy, what's his name? Saul, who's like supposed to be crazy, that lives locked in this
Hmm.
top part of this attic or whatever. So that's the basic setup, and it's like the simplest setup ever. And it's pretty much like,
Dude, there's some weird shit in this too, though. Like you were talking about the old man,
yeah,
which is played by an elderly woman. The actress's name is Elspeth Dudgeon, um, who kind of tells about the history of the house, and like the one scene that it's a he's got like a Fu Manchu and like fake beard and everything, and it's
yeah.
very that's just very weird. I wonder what the story was with that.
I have no idea. I just know that like when I was watching that scene, I was thinking to myself, so like this has to be the inspiration for every time you have like a creepy ass character that reveals all this exposition in a horror film. Like, you know, uh think about um like the Ruby from Hills Have Eyes or somebody like that, who like is part of a family that explains like the situation with the family, or like, is part of that, like a whole explanation of the movie. And in this one, like they go up there, and she slash whatever he is like, um uh, what did they tell you about? And they're like, did they tell you about Saul? And they're like, now who the fuck is Saul? And they're like, well, Saul's the craziest person in this whole house. Like he'll kill us all and burn the house down and all this stuff. So each time you meet somebody, you learn about like somebody else that's in the house that's crazy. And like, but here's the weird thing about this movie that's different than most modern movies. You never in this movie, at least I didn't feel like, you never feel like anybody's in danger, because everything is kind of like tongue in cheek,
Mhm.
comedic. And like another group of people show up, and I think it's oh god, I'm trying to remember the guy's name that plays that character. He's pretty well known. I
I
think it's
didn't. I didn't
Charles
write anything.
Lawson.
Okay.
So he shows up, and with his whatever wife, partner, whatever it is, and like midway through the movie, and they get flooded out too. But like they're just kind of hanging around, and they're cracking jokes and shit, and like it never seems like anybody's really threatened in this movie. Even when they fight, there's a big fight scene with Morgan in it, and the and Pendrell, I think. Even when they fight and all that, not Pendrell. Pendrell's the fucking head guy of the household, but there's another character that they get into a fight with. With Morgan, like you just don't feel like anything bad is gonna happen, and nothing really does. Like
Hmm.
nobody dies in this movie, I don't think.
No, I think like this movie is really all about just a vibe. It gives you a good idea of what maybe a haunted house ride would have been like in 1932. Like I don't know how big that sort of thing was then, but it takes you on a little bit of a ride there. Very atmospheric, very much like some of those early Universal monster movies, in that it just like Frankenstein. It reminded me of Frankenstein. It's on a dark, stormy night and everything, and it's a fun movie. It's something different. If you've seen the Universal monster movies a gazillion times, you want to watch something else from this era. The old Dark House is a pretty cool one to check out, and it's interesting to see some of these very, very early Universal horror movies, because this is stuff that we, like you were saying, we would probably have never watched otherwise. Dumile's introduced us to so many crazy movies over the years, but some classics that we never probably would have checked out otherwise.
And I think the character of Morgan, played by Boris Karloff, by the way, in this, is insanely good too. Like that guy just had a knack clearly for portraying like big lumbering mute guys that were intimidating. Like his presence is really really good in this movie as that character. He doesn't speak any in the movie either because he's dumb according to the people of the house.
Didn't they used to call people deaf and dumb back in the day? Like I
Yeah,
remember my
yeah, they
granny
did.
used to say that about people, but nobody like
That's
that
literally how
was
they explained it. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, like if
Uh,
you were like mentally uh incompetent, or what would be the word that people would say now. Back then it was
you would say
deaf and
intellectually
dumb,
disabled now is what I think.
intellectually disabled. Yeah,
Yeah,
back then they were deaf and dumb.
that was so sad but true. So there are a couple things I did notice about this though. Like it's the first time I really remember one of the earliest movies I remember seeing shots like when they show the Morgan character. There's a shot where like they do a wide shot and then like really quickly in succession they do like a shot of his eyes and then a shot like that fades away and a shot of his like mouth as he's like grinning and then it fades back into like a wide shot like within like 2 seconds. Just really interesting camera work that I don't think you saw that kind of stuff that much in like 30s movies like that. It's usually pretty stationary when you watch those kind of movies where it'll like have like a wide shot or a two shot or a close up, but it was really mixing it up. Like the editing was really interesting.
I did see too where, you know, for Frankenstein, Boris Karloff was not credited. It was like the monster or something as himself or something like that in the original
Yeah.
Frankenstein. So this movie was the very first screen credit for Boris Karloff, which is sort of interesting. But yeah, I mean, this is early days of Universal Pictures. And, like I said, if this is something that sounds like, a lot of people, farting cobwebs out there want to check out some old ass uh, Universal monster movies, Universal horror movies, this is among some of the very first. And, I had fun with it. It's something different. I like haunted house sort of movies anyway. The Uninvited, which come along like, what was it, 12 years after this,
Yeah.
I think is one of the best of all time. I love that movie. The Innocents, which we talked about before, love that one too. That was like 20 years after that one.
Yep.
So,
I mean,
it's kind of where it started was with this.
I would 100% watch this movie though, just so you can see where like, even if you're not a fan of old movies, just so you can see where like a ton of shit comes from in more modern movies. And it's only an hour and 10 minutes long, something crazy like that. So it's like it goes by insanely fast. And there's like a lot of cool shots and a lot of good cinematography that happens in this movie.
Cinematography,
Cinematography.
baby. The cinematography, so the old dark house, if you will. This one's on YouTube, by the way. You can check out the remastered transfer on YouTube as well, which looks great considering it's like 92 years old or however old it is. 90. I'll second that.
It's 92 fucking years old, I think.
Wow.
So real quick, another quick piece of trivia before we end this review though. And I didn't know this until I was looking it up later on, and then I went back and I still couldn't see it. The woman that plays the main lead in this, her name is Margaret in the film, the blonde, is Gloria Stewart, who is the old Rose in Titanic. That's the same woman.
Really? Okay.
Yes. I was like,
wow.
And I went back and tried to like see any kind of like semblance between, and I can't. But that's the same actress. She died in 2010.
Damn, how old was she then?
She was 100 years old when she died.
Jeez.
Oh.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. But yeah, that's the old dark house, and we appreciate Dumile for requesting it. And again, like we were saying, there is one spot open for the Baller and Shot Caller tier, where you can book the show. You can book the review, commentary, show topic, or whatever else. That's over on DEADPIT on Patreon.com. And stay tuned for everything over at DEADPIT.com. Give us the thumbs up.
Up you butt.
Like, subscribe. And if you subscribe, here's something else you can do. Once you subscribe, you can click the bell notification, right? And it'll notify you anytime that Dead Pit puts up new shit.
Or don't. I really don't give a fuck.
I want you to. I want you to.
I don't care.
Let's keep our community growing here on YouTube.
I don't like it. I don't want you to do nothing.
Listen, they need to do that, pal.
No, don't you dare touch it.
Thumbs up. Subscribe. And click that bell.
There's all kinds of wonderful shirts over at shop.deadpit.com. Simply the best horror shirts. On TeePublic, there are others, but they all suck. You can get some Dead Pit Radio shirts. You can get Last Out on the Left. The Hills Have Eyes. Texas Chainsaw. Oh, wait, you can't say Texas Chainsaw. All kinds of shirts, folks. You're gonna love them. Shop.deadpit.com.
Thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. Dead Pit on Patreon.com is the only place to check out a complete archive of the old Dead Pit radio shows all the way back from 2005 on, in addition to the midweek shows, fan commentaries, exclusive podcasts, and much more. Dead Pit on Patreon.com if you're interested. Tiers start at only $1.